This is a place.
This is the place?
This is a place. We want to talk about. This is a place.
Thank you for listening to This is a Place podcast. My name is Brandon, and I'm joined by a man who, unlike LeBron James, selected the Utah Jazz every time he played NBA Jam. Nate.
Absolutely. The Jazz were the best team on NBA Jam back in 92. Is that when that game came out? And I want to say NBA Jam was like the number one arcade of all time, right? As far as money making.
I feel like we've talked about this before.
I
think
feel like
you're
we
right.
have too. And so it's kind of an insult that LeBron James would even suggest that it wasn't a good team, the Utah Jazz.
Just what he does.
One interesting thing, I've been telling you forever to watch Hoosiers, and it's always on KBYU, or it seems like it's on quite a bit. And then as soon as you started watching Cobra Kai, can you guess what's always on KBYU lately?
Karate Kid, probably.
All the Karate Kid movies. Like literally right now as we're recording, Karate Kid 2 is on KBYU right now.
Let's just stop what we're doing right now and go watch it.
Yeah, well, I could just cite the whole movie for you. I could
Oh boy. Nah, that's okay.
Yeah, or reenact it for you.
That's okay. Maybe just to spite you. So I watched Cobra Kai, but I'm not going to watch the original Karate Kids or Hoosiers ever just because I can't do it. So
You can't do it.
give you too much power.
But you'll watch little kid shows like Space Jam and Like Mike and Air Bud.
Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. Oh, geez.
We've done a lot of watching shows lately. So it's only fitting that we chose a show for our topic today, as it's a very fitting topic. And I think it's the most responsible thing we could do, being a Utah-based podcast. All the other Utah-based podcasts are doing episodes on this show, this documentary that is
topic.
Currently number 2 on Netflix last time I checked.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. So I wonder if it made it number 1, but I wasn't paying attention. I don't watch Netflix every day, so.
I don't either, but when I went to click on it last night when I binged it, I noticed it had the number 2 ranking.
But
so
yeah,
we've
all
be responsible.
had Netflix for how long have we had Netflix for? 10 plus years of Netflix streaming.
At least.
And it would be irresponsible of us to not talk about probably the first show that I know of that had something to do with Utah, right?
The Mormons.
That was made.
I believe the answer was the Mormons.
The Mormons. That's my favorite. I mean, I'm sure there's other shows that mention Utah or about Utah, but a Netflix special made just about Utah. I think that's the first one, right?
Yeah.
Presented by Netflix
and BBC. Yeah, it's groundbreaking. Everybody loves the crime and the investigation type format.
Well, we've talked about this in the past that if we really want our podcast to go through the roof, we need to talk about crimes, right?
Exactly.
Or murders. And we cannot pass up this opportunity to get our ratings up because we're going to talk about crime and murders.
And religion.
And it all ties back to Utah.
I guess we haven't officially said that the topic we're covering today is murder among the Mormons.
Murder among the Mormons.
Yes. I have to say, I had some concerns going into this. I'd be a little nervous watching something that's really talking bad about the church, just because that's who I am. And I must say I was pleasantly surprised that it didn't go down that road, because that's what I was expecting.
I didn't know what I was expecting.
You just know your
I
wife wanted to watch it.
I just know my wife. I knew it was coming out. I knew it was made by Napoleon Dynamite writer and creator Jared Hess. So it piqued my interest because I do love Napoleon Dynamite. But it came out. My wife was trying to explain to me, "Hey, we want to watch this new documentary and blah blah blah." And I'm like, "The Murder Among the Mormons?" And she's like, "Yeah, you know about it?" I'm like, "Yeah, who doesn't know about it?" But I'll tell you one thing: we have friends of our podcast who have a podcast called Messing with Mormons. And every time I go to say Murder Among the Mormons, I naturally want to say, and I did it to you once, didn't I?
Yeah.
Messing with the Mormons. So I really hope that they do an episode on this topic as well. I think that'd be a fun listen to hear their perspective. So, or maybe they should do their own documentary called Messing with Mormons.
That too. Why not?
That too. I'm sure Jared Hess needs something else to do now, so why not? But
I wonder why. Why do you think it's got so big?
I don't know. I think the title kind of piques your interest, right? You're like Murder Among the Mormons. Like what is this?
It's
You know,
against Mormons'
was there?
religion to murder.
Right. Well, I think it's against a lot of religions. I could be
But
wrong.
definitely the Mormons. I know.
But best say the Mormons. But I mean, if you don't read what's the word I'm looking for? The info about the movie, I mean, you could speculate what it's going to be about, right? You would wonder, like, what is this? So is there some guy that's killing a bunch of Mormons, or
The first episode relied heavily on kind of showing the embarrassment that the church experienced when these forged documents were coming out, what they thought were legitimate, and almost painted in a way that they were trying to hide the details of them, like trying to cover it up.
Right, like they wanted to buy the documents to keep it a secret from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And maybe back then it was different, but these days, I don't feel like they try to hide as much as maybe in the earlier days. Which the point they kept making in the documentary is for a church that cares so much about their history and their roots, it's odd that they were trying to cover up the history when it's a focal point of the founding of the religion.
That's true. And I did listen to an interview from somebody today that wrote a book about Mark Hoffman. We haven't even said his name yet, have we? But he says sometimes people think that the church worries about people digging into their history because they might find something out. But he says there's just so much rumors and made up stories about the history that it's actually better for members of the church to actually learn about the true history of the church and know about it. I don't know, kind of an interesting comment. But yeah, let's dig in and talk about Mr. Mark Hoffman.
I guess an overview of what it is back in the early 80s. It was 1985 that
you got put in the spotlight, right?
Yeah. So earlier in the 80s, this man, Mark, was finding all these documents. He found this document that was supposedly along with the plates that was by one of the scribes of the Book of Mormon, who said that it was a salamander that Joseph Smith had saw, not an angel. And that was kind of what threw the church into spirals, trying to, like what they said, to hide the history, because that challenged all the thoughts of where the beginnings of the church happened. And that whole beginning is a key point of the church. But it goes on as he gets so deep into this forgery and all this money he's making, when he's almost to the point that he can't keep up the lie. So to cover up, try to throw people off the scent, he decides to kill a few people, and he sends a bomb to 2 different places, and also has one in his own car that blows up in what may have been an attempt at suicide or may have been just an attempt to kind of throw them off the scent even more. And a lot of what the documentary is interviews with people that were involved with him, that knew him, with the process they used to find out the documents were false, and the trial, his confession, and all those happenings is a brief overview of what the documentary is.
Yeah, and it's not a super long documentary. I mean, there's 3 episodes, but they're about just under an hour each, right?
Mhm.
So 3 hours time. One thing, like, I heard before I watched the documentary, and I was watching like reviews on local television and stuff like that, somebody say it's like unlike any documentary you've ever seen. I didn't feel that was the case. Did you?
It was
felt
different.
It was a little different, but it was still in the same style of a documentary, or it kind of felt like a Dateline or something like that, just a Friday, Saturday night crime show that they just go through and interview people and kind of do a little bit of reenacting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the reenacting that they did with Mark and a couple of the guys was pretty Jared Hess. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to another podcast that did an episode on it, and that was the same point they made, is when you really saw Jared Hess come out was in the reenacting with the guns and the bombs. I think they started the documentary in a really good way because it sets the tone for the whole series. One of the people that interviewed said it was an old joke that when pilots flew into Salt Lake City, they say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we're landing in Salt Lake City. Set your watch back 10 years. The coolest thing for me about the documentary was seeing all the old news footage, and it's the news anchors we all know and grew up with.
Yeah.
Just seeing them in their earlier days.
Yeah, it was kind of fun seeing like news stories and stuff. And I mean, that's literally when this all went down, I was 5 years old, but that's usually, like you said, the news anchors and stuff that I grew up with.
I was reading about their making of it, and it's a years-long process to make a documentary. And what Jared and the other guy, Tyler, did was they really built relationships with the people in the videos, in the interviews. And a lot of it was from their association with the guy who I think was the former church historian. I can't recall his name, but he helped get them a lot of access to the old recordings, like showing the church leaders. And because of their relationship with the broadcasting, they were able to get all the old newsreels and everything. So they really put in a lot of work to get what they did, and it took a lot of time and effort.
To be 100% completely honest, I think they could have done the whole documentary in 2 episodes. So I think some parts of it kind of just dragged on, but it was super, super interesting. And I had heard about Mark Hoffman growing up a little bit and heard about the forgeries he did, but I didn't really know the whole story. So that was kind of cool to know really what happened.
I was talking with a friend from work today, and he had the same feeling I did, that I'd never really heard about this. I'd heard bits and pieces of it, but didn't fully grasp what happened. It's not something that's talked about a ton, I don't think.
No, I'm probably the same way, that you hear things about the guy who forged all these Mormon documents. I didn't realize that it was that long ago, back in the 80s. I thought it had been more recent, in the last like 20 years, just from the, conversations I've heard people talking about it.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest things I found out in the research was, so of course the Desert News had to make a response to it, right? And their response was, it left out the story of redemption, the story of forgiveness that came after all the horrific things. And the story goes that Stephen Christensen, the son was the son of Mr. Mack, who is a big prominent guy here in Utah with the stores that help send all the missionaries out, right?
Right.
Everybody goes to Mr. Mack. And so 15 years after the incident, Mark's son decided to go on a mission. And his mom was having a tough time getting him all the things he needed. It's a lot of money to send a missionary out, let alone just pay for the mission. But the getting ready part is a big part as well. So what happened was, in some association she had, someone said, let me give, Mr. Mack a call. And her response was kind of, well, that's weird. I mean, my husband killed his son. It's kind of an uncomfortable thing. But in the end, he invited her to the store. They went to Mr. Mack. They got all the things he needed, all the things a missionary would ever need, and put it all on the counter and said, there you go. So they just gave him everything that he needed for his mission. Didn't have to pay a dime. There wasn't a receipt or anything.
Now I feel bad that I kind of badmouthed Mr. Mack on my mission.
What? Why?
Yeah. I tell you a story. So I went to Uruguay on my mission. It's in South America, Brandon.
Okay.
And an elder in my mission had his family moved into my ward. So he was out about a year when I arrived in Uruguay, and then his family moved into my ward. And so a year later, when he was going home, his parents were coming down to pick him up. And my shoes that I had, my Doc Martens or Skechers, I think they were Doc Martens,
had to be Doc Martens.
Doc Martens, I'm pretty sure. We're getting pretty worn out. And so I wrote a letter to my mom saying, hey, since, those guys are coming down to pick up their son, do you think they would bring a new pair of shoes down with them so we don't have to pay shipping, all that stuff? And I told her the size of my foot and the shoes I wanted, the Doc Martens. And so she heads on down to Mr. Mack to buy them. And the shoe salesman convinced her to buy a different pair of shoes because they'll last much longer or something like that. So she bought those. They get down to give me the package. They're the new shoes. And those shoes hurt my feet so stinking bad. And I'm like, if she just would have bought the shoes I wanted in the first place, everything would be great. So I kind of had a negative review from Mr. Mack for trying to convince my mom to buy a different pair of shoes. And maybe they were better shoes, they just didn't fit right. So you just don't do that. You don't take the gamble when you're sending shoes halfway across the world. If I'm in the store and you want to convince me to try those on and say they're better, great. But yeah, good heavens, those things. I tried for
it's not an easy return process.
No, yeah, the return. This isn't Amazon. So
you were in the Amazon.
I was near the Amazon, but it was not. Anyways, those shoes hurt pretty bad. I ended up giving them. I don't think I wore them more than a week, and then brought them home and gave them to my little brother's friend. And went out and just bought cheap pairs of Uruguayan shoes for the next 2 years, trying to make the ends meet. But she just would have had the Doc Martens. I would have made it another year. But good old. But that's good to hear the story of Mr. Mack.
It softens your heart.
It softens my heart. I will go back to. They didn't even have online reviews back then, but
just hopefully they didn't give those same shoes to the son, because that would have been a real rude move.
That would have been
maybe that was some kind of revenge. Just kidding.
His feet are gonna hurt by these shoes. That's cool. That's a really cool story. I saw the headline for the article and I just never read it, so I'm glad you did, because that's cool little fact.
It's what the people want,
Give the people what we want is not to read. We want you to tell us, Brandon.
We have to talk about a couple key moments from the documentary. The first one is the introduction of the coolest game that I wish I had, Celestial Pursuit.
Never played it. Sorry.
Where can we get Celestial Pursuit? We need to get that game.
Probably
Test our
Desert Book,
knowledge.
Seagull Book.
You think they sell it anymore?
Probably not.
I like that when they were playing Celestial Pursuit, they showed a shot of somebody bringing in Rice Krispie treats. Because can you have a Mormon game night without Rice Krispie treats?
Without refreshments.
Without refreshments to nourish and strengthen your body? No. I think the most cringy moment in the whole documentary was the blessing. I don't know what I could say about it.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But the interview it was a little cringy for me, I must say.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could have been worded very differently, but I think the church has come a long way from those times and someone giving an interview like that. But then again, there was that Moroni guy at the Capitol riots too. So I guess we haven't gotten that far.
It's just different nowadays, right?
Yeah, I think it's a little different. Other than that, though, I didn't feel too bad.
We could have a whole podcast just on crazy Mormon culture things and and theories that people have. Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely could. Or stories from missions. There's plenty of that. But overall, what did you think? Anything else that really stuck out to you from the documentary?
Well, I thought the interesting thing the takeaway I got, if there really is a takeaway, is that I didn't realize that he was just basically trying to rewrite Mormon doctrine, right?
Yeah.
Rewrite the church. That was his whole goal. And how crazy if it would have been if he didn't get caught when he got caught and could have done the missing pages from the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
That would have been super interesting. And the crazy thing I got too is just like he was an atheist at 14.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's basically spent his whole life just
lying,
deceiving people. And
he was good at it.
And he was really good. I think that's the crazy thing, is that he was good at it. And I mean, do you watch Pawn Stars?
Mm-mm.
You ever watch Pawn Stars?
I think I've seen a couple episodes.
You know, where they go to the pawn shop, but it seems like almost every episode of Pawn Stars, somebody's bringing in a document where they're trying to authenticate a signature or whatever. Usually a signature, saying if it's a real signature or not. So Mark was that good that he was fooling
the professionals.
So many people, the professionals. And one interesting thing, a guy that interviewed tonight said, like, I mean, he started off with coins, right? Was figuring out, well, I had a camera. That's another thing too, how brilliant he was to not have Google and say, how do you do this or do that? He just figured it out all on his own, how to defraud people. Mm-hmm. But he started out with coins. He was a coin collector, and he realized that some coins are more valuable than others, and he knew how to manipulate the coins to make them look like the valuable ones. And the sad thing is right now is there's probably still coins out in public right now circulating. That's a very good point. That because he fooled all the experts. So how do they distinguish whether or not it was his or somebody else, or the real thing, right? So, but I guess as long as you believe it's real, then you're willing to pay whatever the price may be for that collector's item. So,
yeah, and you made the point the other day. He would almost go to people and say, "What do you want?" And he would find it for them. And right. Of course, they're going to bite on that. It's the thing they've been looking for their whole life. You say, I have this letter from, Joseph Smith's mother or whatever. And they've been searching for that all this time. And they're like, yeah, of course I want to buy that. Why wouldn't I?
Well, yeah, almost like made to order, right? Your
Yeah.
artifact that you wanted, you just tell him what your dream artifact was, and he would like, yeah, like he
I
was
found one of
that
those.
good at finding it. So, I mean, didn't somebody make the comment in the documentary? It's like, I think it's the lady interviewing Mark himself, right? And she's like, I'm surprised people didn't catch on to that just whatever document they wanted, you somehow were able to find it.
Yeah. He was
He made Indiana Jones look like nothing.
belongs in a museum.
It belongs in a museum after you pay me.
Yeah. Crazy. He was so good at the deceit. Even up to the end when he was confessing, how much of it could you really believe too?
Right. I've heard his story has changed a few times because a big question everybody has, and maybe I mean, with pathological liars, I think sometimes they tell themselves a lie so many times that they tend to believe it, so they don't even know what the truth really is.
Yeah.
But as we know, you kind of mentioned that he ended up killing two people, and then he had a third bomb that went off did it go off to kill him? Did it go off accidentally? Was he really trying to commit suicide? So I don't think the answer to that question will ever really be completely known. Mark too says that he was trying to commit suicide, right? So
Yeah.
that's what people lean towards believing.
At the
So
same time, he mentions I can't wrap my head around the second bomb. The first one he knew was going to kill Mr. Christensen without a doubt. Everything he rigged up with it, that was going to happen. But the second one, he said it was a 50-50 chance that it was going to kill somebody. It was either going to
or
go off
something.
or not. Yeah, it could
Yeah.
have been a cat. It could have been a child, he said. He didn't care just as long as it served the purpose of helping him to throw
Continue
people off
his
his scent, help him to continue to just manipulate and forge and whatever else he did.
which also makes you wonder too that my kind of thought watching the documentary is like, did he set the bomb off on himself just to go all in on making it look like it wasn't him,
Yeah.
that he wasn't involved? Like, why would you try to kill yourself, or did he anyways? But that's what's sad about it. And somebody made a comment that you almost wonder too that if you're willing to do something like that, if his family and his own kids had suspicions, but what was he doing? Was he willing to kill them too? And maybe it's just because we notice it more because we're here in Utah, but when crazy things happen in Utah, crazy things
We go
happen. You know what I
all
mean?
in.
We go all in. Like when we have
We've
when
got Ted Bundy,
we got
Mark
Ted Bundy,
Hacking, Josh Powell.
famous for really good things, and we're famous for super bad things. I wonder if his legacy is why Draper has like the highest fraud rate in Utah still, or in the United States. Just kidding, Draper.
Because
So
people could see how much money you could make.
yeah,
Like,
well, it's crazy.
man,
It's
Ponzi schemes.
Ponzi schemes, and that's one thing I've never really quite understood. The Ponzi scheme seems enticing, but it at some point it's going to catch up to you, right?
It always does.
At least as far as we know, it always does. But maybe
Yeah.
somebody is doing a successful
Somebody's
Ponzi
getting
scheme
away
right
with
now.
it somewhere.
Somewhere right now, but
And
sometimes
maybe
when you
if
look
Mark
at
hadn't gone as far as he did, he would have gotten away with it too. If he would have just hung it up and be like, I'm done. But he took it too far. He couldn't resist the urge to keep going with it. And like you said, his ultimate goal of rewriting the history, it wasn't just about the money, but he wanted to completely change the narrative and almost disprove the church.
I didn't know that he was still alive. He's still just hanging out in prison.
He's still in Draper.
Still in Draper.
Maybe he's orchestrating all the fraud and forgery in Draper. Who knows?
Maybe he mentors people. You know, he kind of reminded me of just because of his like personality and just kind of how like in a way kind of nerdy he was is oh my goodness, I'm having a blank in my mind. Breaking Bad,
Walter White.
Walter White, like that movie or that show kind of scared me, just to show like just a normal science nerdy guy. If they want to be bad, it's they can be scarier than the scariest.
You got some Mormon jokes for us?
How do you stop a Mormon from drinking all your beer at the party?
How?
Invite a second Mormon. That would remind me of Mark Hoffman, because isn't there
His drinking story.
drinking story in the thing? Why did the Mormon cross the road?
Why?
To get to the other bride. Why do Mormon women stop having babies at 35?
Why?
Because 36 would be too many.
Why do melons go to the temple to get married?
Why?
Because they can't elope.
Cantaloupe.
Anyway, it was a fun watching the documentary. If you're into the crime, the investigation, it was kind of fun to have a Utah connection to one, and it was a little different than your run of the mill murder stories because it had everything.
Just makes you wonder, if he never would have got caught, what would have happened?
Never know. I am just wondering when Jared Hess is going to make Napoleon Dynamite 2.
I think everybody's been wondering that for a long time.
I think we can justify a Napoleon Dynamite episode since Preston's so close to Utah, right?
Right.
It's basically Utah.
I'd be okay with the Nacho Libre too, as well.
Nacho Libre?
Yeah.
That's pushing it. But we'll find a connection. And then we'll get Jack Black on here.
Jack Black.
I think if we could convince Jack Black to come on our podcast, people would be okay with us not even having a Utah connection.
Oh, absolutely. Jack Black has to love Utah.
Yeah, of course. Well, let us know what you think about the documentary. Thanks for listening to This Is a Place podcast.